Hello and welcome to Here Tutoring. This video is an introduction to and overview of the ACT Science Test. So, what do you need to know about the ACT Science Test? In this video, we're going to go through 4 key things you should know about the Science Test. First, the ACT Science Test is the 4th section of the ACT, and it comes right after the reading test. Like the reading test, the Science Test is also 35 minutes long and has 40 questions. There will be 7 passages on the Science Test, and they will show up in random order. 3 of the passages will be data representation passages with 5 questions each that focus on charts and tables. 3 of them will be research summary passages with 6 questions each that focus on experiments. And 1 of the passages will be a conflicting viewpoints passage with 7 questions that focuses on reading passages about, well, conflicting viewpoints on an issue. The second thing you should know about the ACT Science Test is that it's not really a science test. In fact, it's actually more like a second reading test, just formatted differently. You don't actually need to memorize any science facts going into the test besides having a basic knowledge of how to read charts and how experiments work. So, don't think of this as a science test, but rather as a reading and critical thinking test. The third thing you should know about the ACT Science Test is that the conflicting viewpoints passage is a very different passage from the other 6 passages, and that it's usually a very difficult passage, so you should go into the science test with a plan for this passage, which we'll talk about in our strategy videos. The fourth and final thing you should know about the science test is that it'll probably be the most rushed test out of the 4 because it has the same number of questions in the same amount of time as the reading test, but there are 7 passages this time, so you'll need to be transitioning and starting fresh more times than for the reading test. If you don't go into the ACT Science Test with a very specific game plan, there's a very high chance that you won't be able to finish and your score will suffer because of that. Like with the reading test, using some counterintuitive test-taking strategies, which we'll talk about in our strategy videos, will help you make the most of the limited time you have and get the highest score possible on the test. Now that you know the basics of the ACT Science Test, it's time to look more specifically at some of the best strategies to use for this test. In the first ACT Science Strategies video, we're going to talk more specifically about the importance of going into the test with a good knowledge of the unusual and complicated format. Thanks for watching, and I will see you there.